Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on our webinar today. We're here today to discuss Cleanroom solutions from Grantek in partnership with Nymi and Systec Solutions. Specifically today, we'll be discussing integrating biometric authentication to improve productivity and compliance. Just a reminder to everyone to please type any questions throughout the webinar into the chat window. We'll also be recording this webinar, and the recording will be emailed to all registered attendees this afternoon. So just to introduce myself, my name is Alissa Daly, and I am the Manager of Strategic Business Development here at Grantek. And over the past few years, I've aided in helping our customers in the pharma and life sciences industries achieve regulatory compliance, improve productivity, and increase their ROI. I've also aided in the launch of Grantek's distribution partnerships with both Systec Solutions and Nimi. We're lucky enough to have representatives from Nimi and Systec Solutions joining us on the webinar today. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Phil Chang. Phil is the Director of Marketing at Nimi. He has over 20 years of experience in sales, trade marketing, sales strategy, and marketing. He has been with companies such as Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, as well as a number of other CPG companies. And having firsthand experience with dealing with product recalls, Phil joined Nimi because of the unique product benefits Nimi has to offer to help minimize these recalls. We also have Thriene joining us, and Jan is the Business Development Manager at Systec Solutions out of Karlsruhe, Germany. And Systec is a German-based manufacturer of best-in-class GMP IT hardware for cleanroom production environments. Jan has over 7 years of experience providing HMI solutions in the pharma, food, and cosmetics industries. And prior to joining Systec Solutions, Jan held management roles in China and throughout Europe for various American firms. So on today's webinar, we are going to be discussing biometric authentication and what exactly that means. Why biometric authentication is becoming so popular within the life sciences industry, what biometric authentication will help you achieve, what is required to implement biometric authentication, and how products designed specifically for GMP environments can help to improve productivity. Lastly, we will be discussing some use cases in life sciences for biometric authentication and answering any questions any of the attendees on the webinar this morning may have. A reminder that throughout the webinar, you can type any questions into the chat window as we go. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Phil.
Thanks, Alissa. Phil here. Thanks for joining us today. We're super excited to be here, and we're excited to bring this to you. I'm going to jump right into it. Biometrics and security is kind of a hot phrase right now. Everyone's talking about it. It seems like every other day you hear about a data leak or a data hack or something of the sort. And as we get into it, probably the first thing to do, there's a bit of legwork here, so bear with me, but we just need to talk about a couple of things. So one is, authenticated versus also authorized. And so, as you automate and digitize your factories and your processes, and as you're integrating, one of the biggest things is to start with proper data and proper security. And the key there is knowing who is doing the work and when they're doing it, because that's kind of critical to being able to log it properly, to make sure you're compliant and make sure you know who is doing what in your organization. The difference between the two, an authorized user, which is really common, is someone who has credentials, so password, username, password, or smart card, or something along those lines, and that could be pretty much anybody. So, I might have a username and password, but, hey, I want to go out for donuts. I'm going to pass my username password to Jan or to Alissa. So they can kind of log in and do my work. Where what we're talking about is being able to identify an authenticated user. So someone that doesn't have the ability to pass on the credentials, they have to stay, the credentials stay with that person. So you always know who is authenticating who you are. So that's the first part of this. Alissa, do you mind flipping this slide for me? Okay, so the next is around multi-factor authentication, and so this helps with creating an authorized user, an authenticated user versus an authorized, and that's really you need to have a couple of things here. You need to have 3 factors. 2 of the 3 factors gets you what they call multi-factor authentication. So you have to have something like knowledge, so something the user and only the user knows. So that's typically a password. You have to have possession of something. So something the user has and only the user has. So that would be a smart card, a PKI token, a pass or something like that. And then the other alternative is inherent. So something that the user and only the user is. And that usually is a biometric of some sort. So if we pop to the next slide, I'll just show you how Nymi does it. Nymi takes these 3 for multi-factor authentication. And what you'll hear us say a lot is we don't use passwords because passwords are kind of the weak link of it all. So of all the hacks that you hear happening in the news, 65% of those hacks include passwords. And so if you feel you're safe with a really cool password or really hard password, you're not. And so what we do is we do something different. We use what the user has, so that would be a security token. So we would verify you with your organization's Active Directory, and then we would use what the user is, which is a fingerprint in our case, to match to fingerprint template. Those 2 things together make it multi-factor authentication. And then the last thing that we use as extra measure is we have a workplace wearable security device that tests for liveliness. So we just we make sure that the band stays on your wrist, and so that way you have a a high confidence that the person who's wearing the workplace wearable, the Nimi band, is the person who is going to be making your signatures happen. So that's kind of how these set up. Sorry for the setup, but sometimes with security stuff, it's important to get through those pieces. Those are kind of key questions that everybody has. And then from so all this authentication stuff, what does it mean for the FDA and CFR Part 11? Which is a common question, right? And so part of this is about biometric devices, electronic signatures based on biometrics. They need to have a high reliance that they can't be used by anyone besides their genuine owners. And so this 2-step process of one, verifying your ID with your company's Active Directory, and then the fingerprint is really what makes it biometric, and that's the thing that you use to sign, because then now you have a high confidence that as you're using terminals and you're tapping NFC pads, that you are in fact the right person making the right you're the right person signing whatever it is that you're supposed to be signing. And so that's kind of how these fit together. So what we're trying to solve, kind of leads to, our partnership with Grantek and Systec is, there are a lot of pain points that come with this stuff, right? That biometrics is trying to solve. And one of this is the highest priority, which is trackability and traceability of every task and subtask. So as we digitize, you want to be able to know what is happening in your factory, what is happening in the plant or the assembly room, the clean room environment. And then you also want to be able to replicate actions as quick as possible. So, when you're signing and you're doing a lot of passwords and things like that, the faster you can do them, the better it is, the more efficiency you get. And then what you hear a lot from, I think, the 3 of us is, biometrics is all the rage. So there's all sorts of things like facial recognition, and iris scan, fingerprint scanners. But what you'll see is that in a lot of cases, it's inefficient because of the real world situation. I have a picture here, not to steal his thunder, but Jan has a much cooler picture later on. But you know, see this guy with the face mask on, the hairnet on, the gloves on. All of this stuff prevents you from, in one form or another, of using biometrics. What Nimi's done is figured out how to do this. At the beginning of every shift, you would activate your Nimi band, and then you would put it on underneath your personal protective equipment, your PPE, and then never have to touch it during your shift. You'll be able to tap and use it right from underneath all that equipment on, and still be verified as an authenticated user. So that's kind of a preamble to security and biometrics and why Nimi. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jan. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got one more slide. I apologize. A really quick thing on how this works. So if you kind of start in the bottom right corner of this slide, you know, the identity ecosystem, we always start with the company's Active Directory. So that's where they store their users and their user IDs. We pair it with the Nimi server, and then we use the Nimi band app, if you move to your left, as a way to put that token on the Nimi band so that you know that that user is the right person. And then if you go to the top left corner, the Nimi band with your fingerprint authenticates the device, and then the device is ready to tap your signature everywhere you go. We use an NFC pad with a BLE. BLE stands for Bluetooth in the background to help keep that security chain whole. And then we use those two to interface with whatever your acronym happens to be. So either an SSO, which is a single sign-on, with your manufacturing execution system or your ERP system. Any of those will interface with Nimi, you know, the Nimi band to help capture credentials so that you can properly sign off. And I think that is the last of my slides. So now I can turn this over to Jan.
Thank you very much, Phil. And let me also say that we are really excited to be here today and have the opportunity to give you a bit of an overview and a bit of advice on how to improve productivity, especially with the challenges in clean room environments. So the key product features, and this is really where we come in as a hardware supplier. Clean rooms have special requirements, or any GMP environments have special requirements, especially in relation to cleanability. Everything needs to be cleaned. It needs to be ensured that the surface is free of any active bodies, any residues from a former production run, former batch, so that when you run your new batch, there is no cross-contamination or anything of that sort. So therefore, the products that are being used in those kind of areas need to be designed and made to be used in those environments. And because of the environment, you are required to wear your personal protective equipment, the PPE, and it limits you to some degree. It certainly, if you're not really used to it, then it makes you uncomfortable for a while until you get used to it. And the biometric devices to date, they usually are fixed mounted. They are not cleanable, and they are not really made to be usable with personal protective equipment. And to Phil's point earlier on, fingerprint sensors, you need to have your fingerprint actually available to press it onto the reader. If you wear your hygienic gloves up to 3 layers, you're not going to take them off and on again every time you need to put a fingerprint to validate that you submitted some information or stuff like that. Same with the iris scan. I think that's a great technology. And I actually provided a little picture here from the Simpsons series. That way you can actually see what we mean. You have a fixed mounted solution that sits somewhere on the wall, and you would need to remove your glasses or your PPE in order to actually get a good read on your iris. That all takes time. It's very inconvenient to do that with your PPE, and therefore it is not something that is really getting a broad acceptance into the industry, and therefore alternative ways need to be explored. And we think that the Nymi band is one of the, if not the best solution for bringing multi-factor authentication and biometric data recognition into the production field. If you can move on to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. So from our point of view, and again, this is from the hardware point of view, and it has to be an integrated solution in order to make that really easy usable, make it acceptable to the operator, who ultimately is the person who needs to wear the stuff, to use it in the production environment. So the solution that we come up with is to integrate the NFC and the Bluetooth Low Energy reader into either a combination of the keyboard, which in this case, what we see in the picture here is a glass keyboard, and then a Bluetooth Low Energy module that is at the back of the display. It's all internally, so you're not seeing that, but trust me, it will be there. So it's easy to use. And we place the NFC reader actually in the top right corner of the keyboard. That looks in the first, or on the first glance, it looks a bit awkward and inconvenient, but this way we make sure that it is really something that the operator does on purpose and not by accident. And when we go into a bit more details onto the MES system, you will understand why that's the case. If there is, for one reason or another, no need or no opportunity to integrate that into the glass keyboard, then we also have what we call a connect box, which has the hardware integrated. So that way we can upgrade an existing installation, but we can also supply that connect box to other devices, and we can also make that connect box available as an in-wall mounted module. So that way you can use your biometric Nymi band to actually access and eventually also limit access to certain areas, certain rooms in your production environment. So, and because of the NFC technology, the near field communication, you have absolutely no issues with your PPE because you're wearing that piece of equipment underneath your gowning. So it works through the various layers of gloves. It works through your coat, all kind of equipment, and that makes it really convenient for the operator to use. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the productivity gain and how we help improve productivity, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that usually a clean room has a single point where an HMI is being located, or where then an iris scanner would be located next to the HMI. And in or any operation that has an MES system installed, the user needs to identify and authenticate any production steps or any steps he takes in the MES system. So, on average, an operator needs to provide between 50 and 70,000 times his username and password in a production environment per year. So if you look at the kind of layouts that we have lined out there, if you are able, or if you have only one fixed point and the operator needs to do 50 to 70,000 sign-ins, basically, the way and the time he needs to move back and forth between the different points where the data occurs and where you then enter and confirm the data, that's a lot of wasted time, wasted energy. And then moving then to the right-hand side of the pictures here, if you make that data or that confirmation available at the point of occurrence, then you save those extra those extra ways. And one of the huge benefits of the Nymi band is that where it would previously take you 15 to 20 seconds to type in your username and your password, it takes you now only 2 seconds because no username and no password is required anymore. It's a simple move of your arm to make sure that you basically do that on purpose. But that gives you the reduction of time and the removal and the potential error of entering your username or your password in the wrong way. So that moves the productivity a huge step forward, especially in environments where any percentage or any half percentage of productivity gain is a huge bonus for the company. And because we make it an addition or an integrational part of the unit, of the HMI, there is no extra cleaning effort. There is no one who needs to take out the Q-tips to start cleaning in earnest one of the plastic units or an iris scanner or a fingerprint reader. So that way it really helps to improve your productivity, to improve your workflow, and to make life easier for the operator. And therefore, even though you might, or the operator might not really have a say in that kind of decision, but it helps broaden the acceptance on the shop floor and ultimately to increase the performance and the happiness of the operator. Next slide, please. So we do offer that kind of solution based on our hardware, which we have 2 versions on, and we talk about the fixed modules first. That would be a single data entry point solution physically, which we can mount to the wall, which we can mount on pipes. We can mount it on movable swing arms, all kind of variations that we can offer here. It's a modular system, so if something happens to one of the units, and because they are man-made, something might occur to them, then it's a very easy swap out by removing 4 screws, removing a number of cables, putting in a new unit without ever breaching the clean room wall. So you can continuously operate in the room. The unit is being replaced and then operation restored within 10 minutes. It's all rated IP65, so it's very quick and easy to clean. But it does require a structural reinforcement of the wall where the HMI is being placed. And of course, you need to have power and data cables on the side there. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the mobile solutions, that really gives you full flexibility because it gives you the opportunity to move the HMI with the operator and therefore have the data entry point available where the data occurs. So if you move the unit from A to B to C, it actually stays with the operator and does not require the operator to go from A to a central point and then go back, go to B, go back to the central point, these kind of things. So that gives you the opportunity to move the unit around, and also for in terms of productivity and using your assets. If you have clean rooms that are not used continuously 24/7, they're only used 2 or 3 days per week, and then they're being shut down, being cleaned, being prepared for the next production batch. All the HMIs, all the equipment in that room is sitting unused for that period of time. And the mobile solutions, which we call a trolley, they give you the opportunity to roll the HMI out of the clean room, get it cleaned, move it to the next clean room where the next production batch is about to start, and that way you utilize your asset to the full. The system comes with a long life battery pack that lasts you 2 or 3 shifts, depending on the battery size, depending also a bit on what kind of performance you're looking to get out of the unit. It's available in all kind of flavors. You see a duplex solution here. You see a single screen. You see a single screen in a portrait mode. We can mount them next to each other. We can mount them onto the same pole side by side. to make sure that you have one screen in a landscape mode where you then enter the data for the MES system, and also the portrait mode next to it then to read through the SOPs. So it's really a flexible and modular solution. The only drawback, kind of, is that you are required to provide a parking spot, basically, for the units for them to recharge. The reason why we recommend that is that because you usually have a charging cable. We do offer an inductive charging solution as well, but in this case, we would say, okay, use a charging cable. And you don't want to have that cable lying around in one room while the unit is in a different room. You don't want operators to forget the unit. You don't want to have a cable lying around or being a source for safety issues, stuff like that. So our recommendation is you allocate a parking spot, you put a little stainless steel box onto the wall where you store the cable, and then when you need it, you just pull out the cable, hook the unit up to it, and get it recharged. Okay. We've been cooperating with Nimi for quite a while now, and one of the fantastic applications that I really like to highlight is an MES application with an isolator. You know, the isolator is where you glove up, you're standing at the unit, your gloves go up to your shoulders basically, and it's super difficult to get out and get in. And when you work with an MES system, you have to do your authentication that you did the next step, that you did do this step, and you got piece A and piece B all together and everything. And in order to help with this kind of application, the customer that we made a solution for, they are putting the Nymi band around the ankle of the operator. So instead of putting it on their arm and making it basically a standard application, they put it around the ankle, and that way we mount or we have a trolley, one of our mobile solutions with a connect box, one mounted onto the display for standard applications, and also one connect box mounted on the 5-arm base, so at foot level basically. So when the operator is done with his step in the isolator, they don't need to get out and do the data entry. They can simply confirm that they did their production step by moving their ankle against the reader box. So that way you really have the benefit of a productivity gain by moving that one easy without having to unglove and reglove again. So that's an example that I find really interesting because it shows the flexibility from the Nymi band, but also the flexibility that we can add to your special requirements in those production areas. And again, if there are any questions in regards to the hardware, any questions to the units themselves, to our products, feel free to put a message through the chat message. And with that, I hand over to Alissa again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jan. So Jan has just shared a great example with the isolator for the Nymi band with the Systec and Solutions hardware. I'd like to share some other Nymi application examples that we have seen with customers in the life sciences industry. So when it comes to warehouse and logistics, we have seen applications like raw material receipts, pulls of ingredients to weigh rooms, pulls of packaging materials, returns to warehouse of partial containers or skids, and of course, supporting an electronic batch record. And these applications could certainly span both across clean rooms and unclassified spaces. Within weigh and dispense or raw materials prep, We've seen ingredient verification, weighing, recording, tracking, either of standalone or as part of an EBR. Within process, manufacturing, formulation, etc., batch execution and recording, starting, holding, resuming, etc., loading recipes, selecting batch sizes, response to alarms and deviations in the process, event acknowledgement, manual entries, etc. Within filling and packaging, we've seen line clearance and equipment cleaning, setup confirmation and equipment operation, certainly within laboratory quality control, as well as Jan briefly mentioned, physical access. So actually mounting the Nimi Connect boxes outside of a room in order to provide or have users using the Nimi band in order to gain access, physical access to a restricted room. One example that we would like to highlight is a case study that was completed with Astra Zeneca. So Nymi worked in partnership with Verum on their PassX MES software to complete a pilot with Astra Zeneca in Germany. So the scope of this pilot was setting up a sandbox system using the Verum PassX. 25 users over a period of 6 weeks completed this pilot. The goals of the pilot were to have a successful completion of the test of relevant use cases, leading to reduced efforts for authentication and e-signing in the PassX MES. Some of the findings or feedback from the AstraZeneca operators, they saw efficiency gains and less frustration. The ease of use and efficiency was something that was noted. They liked that the Nimi band would log them out automatically when they weren't at their physical workstations. The speed of signing in and signing for steps within PassX was a main advantage noted. And the ability to scan and e-sign in one step was the bulk of the benefit, replacing typing the old age user and password method with the Nimi band was something that the AstraZeneca operators really commented on. And if you would like more details on this AstraZeneca case study, feel free to reach out to us and we can certainly provide more details on that. So something that I wanted to highlight within this webinar was the turnkey offering that the 3 companies, Nymi, Systec and Solutions, and us at Grantek are able to provide. So with Nymi providing the hardware from a product's point of view with the Nymi band, Systec and Solutions providing that interface with their hardware, the Connect box, which interfaces with the HMI, or the HMI that does interface between the Nymi band and the software. And then Grantek helping to provide the infrastructure, the integration, and the support required in order to bring this all together. So the 3 companies, we do have a partnership, Grantek with the products as a distributor, Nymi with Systec as technology partners, and then Grantek as the integration partner, really tying this relationship all together. And the advantage to using a systems integrator like Grantek, while we are a systems integrator, we're also a business solution provider. So as I mentioned, we are actually the exclusive North American distributor of Systec and Solutions products, as well as the integration partner of Nimi in North America. And on this slide, I'd just like to highlight some of the partners that we do work with within the life sciences industry, including Verum, Sepasoft. We are a gold partner of Panduit, a recognized systems integrator of Rockwell Automation, a solution partner of Siemens, a premier integrator with Ignition, and a certified system integrator with Cognex. We are affiliated with some other partnerships, some other companies through our partnerships, but these are some that we would like to highlight. And if you'd like to know more information on that, please feel free to reach out to us as well. Just to give an overview of Grantek within North America, we do have 9 bricks and mortar offices, as well as 4 satellite offices currently across North America. And that's approximately 200 employees across North America providing consultation, design work, delivery to our customers across primarily life sciences and pharma, food and beverage, and CPG. Grantek has recently published a white paper outlining our partnership with Systec and Solutions specifically. In that white paper, we do discuss industry compliance and how Systec and Solutions really exceeds customer expectations when it comes to providing hardware for GMP environments. We touch on the benefits of using Systec and Solutions products in clean rooms, some applications, what makes Systec's products unique. So you can find that white paper on our website, as well as several other points of information, lots of content, white papers, case studies, blog posts. You can see kind of a snippet of our website on the right-hand side there. But you can find this white paper and others at grantek.com. We've also recently released a video in partnership with Systec and Solutions and Nimi, outlining our joint value across the 3 companies and the turnkey solution we are able to provide to our customers through these partnerships. The video does also include a live demo of the Nymi band in action, so we encourage you to visit Grantek's YouTube page and you can see this video and some others as well. And while Grantek is a distributor of these products, we just want to remind you that we also do provide consulting, infrastructure, custom software support, help with technology certificates, validation, 24/7 support, including hypercare support, remote support, deployment teams. If you'd like any information on Grantek systems integration and the support and integration support that we do provide, we'd love to be your integrator of choice. So please just feel free to reach out to info@grantek.com if you're interested in learning more about Grantek specifically. We will also, Grantek, as well as Systec and Solutions and Nymi, will be jointly exhibiting at a couple of upcoming events in the Boston area. So September 18th, we will be at the ISPE Boston chapter product show, and that takes place at Gillette Stadium. We will be there for the one-day event. We will also be in Boston again in November 7th and 8th at the Pharma MES USA show. So we encourage you to come by, visit us at our booths. We will be exhibiting with some demo equipment. So we will have various configurations of the Systec and Solutions hardware, as well as live demos of the Nimi bands there at the show. So we encourage you to certainly come out and join us. And with that, I'd like to open the floor up to some questions. If you haven't had a chance to add the questions into the chat, you can certainly do so now. I know we have some questions coming in, so I will just jump to those. So first question, what makes Nymi biometrics different from everyone else's? So from optical or facial recognition, they're everywhere. How is Nymi different? So Phil, maybe I'll toss that along to you and we can kind of tag team this answer and jump on that.
Yeah, you got it. It's a great question. It really is. Biometrics is a hot thing. Everyone's talking about it right now. I think where Jan and I both pointed this out is so Nimi is a biometric solution. It uses a fingerprint to authenticate you as a user, so that you're able to tap an e-signature or gain physical access, those sort of things. Where it's a little bit different than everybody else's, it doesn't get in the way of any of your personal protection type of equipment, so your PPE. Because at the beginning of the shift, you would put your fingerprint, authorize. The band becomes on your wrist or on your foot, as Jan was saying, becomes always on is what we call it, right? And so it's ready to authenticate all the time. That allows you to put it on underneath your gowns, your gloves, that sort of thing, and it doesn't get in the way of what you have to do. And so it does make us different in that sense, where everything else, if you're optical, you got to make sure you take off your glasses or your face mask. If it's facial, again, glasses, face mask, hairnet, all of those sort of things. And then if it's fingerprint, you have to do the fingerprint every time. You can't be wearing gloves. So just different in that sense that you do the authentication at the beginning of a shift, and then you don't have to do it again. You can continue to use that authentication and e-signature all the way through your day.
Excellent. Great. Anything to add to that, Jan?
Not really. I think the important point really is that you have to keep in mind that you have a special protective equipment on, and that makes it inconvenient for any standard solution. So something special is required, and Nimi offers that speciality to the full extent.
Perfect. Thank you. So next question coming through, in regards to the Nymi band, is the scan of the band being used as a replacement for the traditional user ID and password? And a follow-up to that question, is the usage of the Nymi band more akin to scan token and less biometric authentication?
So it's actually kind of two pieces there. So one is there is a token in the band that is authenticated to your Windows Active Directory. So we make sure that you've got the right user, but that token doesn't get activated until you put the fingerprint in. So the biometric portion of this, it is a biometric device because the fingerprint is what activates the band. So the token is a passive piece of this, and you can't use the Active Directory signature until you activate the biometrics in it. So hopefully that makes sense. The token stores your Active Directory information, and then the fingerprint at the biometrics is what makes the authentication work, and that's what drives the e-signature.
Great, thank you. Another question that's come through, and this is a question that I hear a lot from customers. How can I wear the band in a clean room area? Our company does not allow jewelry in clean rooms.
Ooh, that's a really great question. And the answer is one, it's really not, you need to think of the Nymi band. So one, we call it the Nymi band and not a watch, right? And so it's not the Nymi watch, it's a Nymi band. One of the major distinctions is that while it shares the same shape as a watch, it doesn't tell the time. And so it removes that one safety concern that most places have about, jewelry or watches being a distraction. The second thing, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. You do wear it, you authenticate it once at the beginning of your shift, and then you leave it on underneath your personal protection, all the time. And so it never really comes into play. So it isn't exposed above your clothes or anything like that, the way you would wear a watch so you can see the watch face and track the time. This literally stays underneath your clothing, underneath your protective gear, so it stays out of the way and it can't catch on equipment and those sort of things.
Excellent, thank you. And probably, I think we have time for one more, maybe two more questions. How does Nymi connect with existing software like SAP?
Yeah, also good question. So we really interface with almost everything. We have a software development kit that allows you to plug Nymi into almost anything, or you've got, a single sign-on that will help you manage the connection. So those two pieces help you connect to anything. And then, this is kind of a wonderful relationship we've got, is the folks at Systec have built this wonderful Connect box, that allows you to be able to use an NFC pad in any environment, including Cleanroom. And then, the Grantek guys will help you sort out any other problems that you have, really.
Great. And looks like we have one for you, Jan. What kinds of cleaning agents can be used on the Systec and Solutions hardware?
So yes, that's a great question because we hear it also all the time, especially when you work in those kind of environments where you want to make sure that nothing cross-contaminates your production. So we have very good experiences with stuff like sporklins, which you leave on the units for 10 to 30 minutes and then you wash it off with alcohol or clean water. It's also so anything that is hydrogen peroxide based up to a 25% concentration. Any of the normal standard cleaning agents that you use in your clean room for the other equipment is perfectly fine to use it on the hardware, on the HMIs, because the three main components that we use or materials that we use is really stainless steel with a very smooth surface. It's less than 0.8 micrometer on the surface. We use glass and we use clean room silicon, and that's it. So all those three materials have been perfectly fine in the past and will continue to do so in those production environments with the standard cleaning agents that you use.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I think we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us this morning. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to email info@grantek.com and we can provide some more information. I would just like to really extend my sincerest thanks to Phil and Jan for joining us this morning. We continue to really appreciate the partnership that you and your companies have with Grantek, and we really appreciate your time on the webinar.
No worries. We're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, have a great day, and thank you again for joining us.